Hey everyone, this is Eric Bond, the founder of Beat the GMAT, and today we have a great exit interview. It's with Krista, and we're going to be talking with Krista about her experiences in getting into probably the most selective business school in the world, Harvard Business School. So Krista, thanks for coming and welcome.
Thanks, I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. So the way that these exit interviews work, for those of you who are new to these sessions, is we're talking to our own Beat the GMAT community members who have made it through the process. I have a set of questions that I am going to ask Krista that we prepared, and we're going to go through those questions. And towards the end, if you want to submit your own questions, we're going to have some time to ask them live, and we'll do our best to answer your questions together. So that being said, just sit back and relax. This is going to be a great session. Krista, I can already tell that this is going to be fun with you today. So let's start with the first question, which is, tell me about yourself. Who are you?
Sure. So I am a senior consultant for Booz & Company, which is a management consulting firm for those of you who don't know. I live in Houston, Texas. I've been with Booz & Company for about 2.5 years now. Before that, I worked for Marathon Oil Company for about a year and a half right out of college. I graduated from A&M with a degree in industrial distribution, which is kind of a mixture between a technical degree and a business degree. So that's what I came out with, and then, like I said, went on to Marathon and then came to Booz.
So it sounds like in your background, you've worked at some great companies. I mean, obviously Marathon and Booz are top tier companies. A lot of MBAs, in fact, want to get into those fields. So why did you decide you needed an MBA? You're already in a pretty good career track.
So, once I entered the career life, I kind of started to look around, as most of us do, and kind of see what I would want to do with my future. And I've always kind of wanted to do leadership and be in a leadership role and manage other people. And as I looked around some of the companies that I was working in, Marathon and then also Booz, I definitely noticed that there was a shortage of women in leadership positions. So first I kind of wondered if this was going to be a limiting factor. And then I kind of thought that, this was something that I felt really passionate about and really wanted to make a difference in this particular area. So I think that this is going to be a major structural change to the business world that's going to be happening over the next, 5, 10, 20 years, and I want to be in a position to be a part of that change. And I thought that this degree would be very useful, to have this backing, to have this knowledge and this, study in leadership and other business principles. And so that's what really drove me to want to apply.
So, Chris, let's talk about how you went about selecting the schools you wanted to apply to. So obviously you picked Harvard. What kinds of things were you thinking about as you were narrowing down the list of schools that you thought might be good for you?
So I had a couple of different factors that I was weighing in. First of all, I was, at that particular point, I was hoping to be sponsored by my current company, which I am sponsored now, but at this point that I was selecting schools, I wasn't sure if I was going to be. But so based on that, Booz has a list of about 10 to 12 schools that they will sponsor you to attend. So that, does kind of that first cut for you based upon what those particular schools are. And then within those schools, I began to focus on kind of larger cities. I am married, and my husband, is obviously going to move with me, and so we needed to find some of the larger cities where he could work. So I ended up applying to Stanford, Harvard, Columbia, Kellogg, and Booth, 5 schools in round 1, which everyone thinks I'm crazy for actually doing. And other than, the geography and Booz's list, I also just really immersed myself in research around schools. I obviously used this site a ton. I used Poets and Quants, other blogs, read people's, student experience blogs and things like that, and just tried to find schools that I felt like I really connected with. So,
wow, 5 schools, by the way. That's pretty crazy. All round 1, too. God bless you. So, actually, I have a lot of questions that came out of your response just now, but I want to actually pinpoint on one thing that is really fascinating. So you said that Booz is sponsoring your MBA education?
Yes.
So by sponsoring, that means they're paying for everything?
They're paying for tuition. So obviously they don't pay, well, maybe not obviously, but they don't pay for living expenses or other, peripheral types of expenses. But that $100,000 that you acquire over 2 years from tuition, they are paying for that.
Wow.
Which is unbelievably, it's just a really huge blessing, I think.
Let me ask you this. So are these sponsorship models pretty common in the consulting field from what you've heard and seen?
They actually are. All of our top competitors, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte, all of them do this sponsorship thing. There is a process that you have to go through in order to get sponsored, and I think most of the companies sponsor like the top 30% of their performers.
Gotcha.
So, you know, it is something that I've had to kind of politically manage over the last couple of years, talking to partners and getting the word out there that I wanted to apply to school and all of that, but it definitely worked out well in the end.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going off script a little bit because this is so fascinating. So when you some more questions about this, two more actually. The first is so what's the commitment for you after business school with Booz? Like, do they require you to be there for like 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, two years, and Booz actually does it where they pay your loans off after you return. Some other schools pay directly to the school some other companies pay directly to the schools while you're in school. Booz pays once you return. So, you know, every 6 months they basically pay a quarter of your loans off, and if you were to leave, first of all, if you weren't to come back, they just wouldn't pay off your loans.
Sure.
You would have your loans, and if you stay, a year, you get half paid off or whatever.
Yeah, I think you've just made every single one of our viewers today so jealous because this is a pretty sweet setup. To land back in a great company like Booz too is just that much cooler too. The other question I had related to this was, when you're applying to business school, did you feel weird or or awkward in any way that your company kind of knew you were going through the admissions process, since you clearly it seems like it was more public in that sense, right?
Yeah, it was completely open. It actually was really nice because everyone that I was working with knew that I was going through the process. All of my recommendations came from people that I worked with, and a lot of people that I work with have done the business school thing, and they supported 100%, and we had a lot of conversations about it. It was very open. My current project team, when I was in the really thick part of the process, were very helpful as far as, Krista needs to not go to dinner tonight because she needs to go work on her essays, and It was just really open. So that was really nice.
That is incredible. I mean, you're so lucky because there's not many people who have such a similar support structure, if you will, when they're applying to business school, and it's really cool to see that Booz is one of those places. Kind of makes me think, yeah. Well, for those of you who are out there really, really early in your careers, maybe you should try finding a company like Booz if you know that business school is the path for you, because it's just a good way of getting some free dollars and a great career afterward.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, let's talk about Harvard a little bit more. What are you most excited about? What's exciting you most about becoming a Harvard student? Any classes, network, like what is it?
There are a ton of things, honestly. But I think, one of the reasons that I was really attracted to this particular school is that in all of my research of other schools and what everyone does to produce these great business leaders, Harvard seems to have really perfected this case study method that they tailor to, creating great leaders for the business world, and that's just their pure focus. We want to create leaders, and that's what I'm so excited about. I mean, I have so much to learn about leadership and about ways that I can affect the business world and the different companies that I work for, and I think that HBS has done a really great job of perfecting that method of helping you learn those things. Yeah. Obviously, it's a really strong brand. I'm excited about graduating with that degree. It's a really strong network. I'm excited about leveraging that for the rest of my career. And I'm really excited about the whole case method thing. I think that it's a great way to learn. I sat in on a class when I went up there to interview, and it was just mind blowing the way that everyone was so focused on this discussion, and they'd prepared, and they were, this class of students was just so actively discussing these issues, and so that got me really excited.
That's awesome, and you're basically validating one stereotype I have of the consultants as well. I find that consultants are just really eager to get into the case method style because it's kind of similar to the work that you do in some ways, right? You're sort of analyzing a big picture. So you'll be doing that every day, I'm sure. And we'll see how you will like it once you're writing your own cases and like 2 a.m. or whatever. You may have a different tact in terms of what you feel. Okay, so this is the point in the interview where I make my common joke, which is our site is called Beat the GMAT, so I have to ask you a GMAT question.
Yeah.
So here's my GMAT question. Let's talk about your prep. How did you go preparing for the GMAT? Did you take a course or did you self-study?
So I self-studied. I did not take a course. I wanted to take a course, and I probably would have. And friends of mine who are applying to school now, I actually recommend that they take a course. But with my travel schedule, it just didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. I basically false started on studying probably 2 times before I actually studied. So what really helped was actually signing up for the test on the 3rd time that I started studying.
Awesome.
So I signed up about 9 weeks from the date that I started studying. So I condensed it into about a 2-month period, and I spent time every single day, whether it was late at night, which usually it was, but I spent 1 to 2 hours just working through problems. And when I started, I was just working problems and saying, oh, look, I did 20 questions and I got 15 of them right. That's pretty good. Let's go to the next 20. And once I got a couple of weeks in, I really figured out that it was very important to be paying close attention to those 5 that I got wrong.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I shifted and started really focusing on the error logs and looking at what I was doing wrong. But really, I really heavily used that official guidebook, used your site a ton, obviously, used a couple of other sites, and just worked practice problems. And then I probably did about 4 practice tests throughout the whole process. And then took the test in June before I turned in my applications in October.
Okay, so I'm really, really pleased that you're a self-studier, because so many of us out here in our community, given schedules and so forth, you have to go with the self-study option as well. So you travel all the time. You have ridiculously weird hours. Sometimes you have to eat dinners with clients and whatever. How did you find the time to study? Like, could you do it consistently, or what was your sort of strategy for that?
So I have to be really honest that when I was really studying, I was on a lighter project, which actually ended up being what prompted me to say I need to sign up now, study now, and get this done. So that helped. I mean, lighter project though, you're still working till 8 or 9 at night, and then you gotta find time to eat dinner and talk to family or whatever. So really it was just about, and I hate to say this, but it was kind of just about, for a couple of months I sacrificed maybe a full night's rest and studied late. It was usually between like 11 and 1 a.m. or maybe a little bit later that I would do my studying, and just got a little bit less sleep on those nights than one might prefer.
Yeah, spoken like a true Harvard person. I'll just sacrifice my sleep. It's cool.
Who needs it? Who needs it?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's really nice to see someone that just made it work. I mean, this is a really common complaint. It's like, I work so much, or I have a weird work schedule, I can't make it work. Well, everyone take a look at Krista. She's living proof that it is possible to make it work. So it's great to see. And for those of you who are just joining us, by the way, in our audience, we're speaking with Krista, who is a Beat the GMAT member as well as an incoming Harvard Business School student. So she's telling us all the details about how she got into HBS. So if you have questions, feel free to chat them in. There's a little box on the right-hand side if you're viewing this, and we'll try to get to those questions at the end. A couple more questions for you then. So you talked about your GMAT prep, which is awesome. I'm glad that you mentioned that Beat the GMAT was useful to you, as well as some of the error logs that we produce. Not to plug myself too much, and but I am. But let's talk about your application itself. So the essays. So how did you think about writing your essays? Like, okay, you're staring at a blank computer screen at this point. Like, what kinds of things did you do to get the writing started? Like, did you start outlining? Did you talk to your friends and family? What'd you do?
So one of the things that I did was I bought a couple of books sort of throughout the summer that I read, and I can't remember what the exact names were now, but they're the ones that have the highest ratings on Amazon about application essays for business school or whatever, and kind of read through some of those. And those have a lot of tips on framing your thoughts and really thinking about what some of your biggest experiences have have been. So I kind of started to make notes on what I thought some of the experiences that I would write about were. I actually worked with a admissions consultant for the one career goals essay, and he and I worked on just really getting that perfect for, I could hopefully transfer it to all of the different schools. And I didn't want to spend a ton of money on that type of service, but I really did want someone just to help me with really getting that particular essay tuned to what the business schools were really asking, really answering their question about career goals. So that was really helpful, and that helped me kind of kickstart the whole process. And then, once I got that one done, that helps a lot because you can use it at each of the different schools, of course, completely tailoring it differently to the school's brands and what they're looking for. And then with the other essays, it was really just, I would think about the topic for quite a while. I mean, I started writing essays in August, probably early August, and applications were due 2 months later, September. Yeah. But I did apply to 5 schools, so this was a pretty big process. And I just kind of, this is going to sound really strange, but I kind of let it permeate like my whole life, and that sounds really bad. But what I mean by that is I just was always kind of thinking about it, and I would always, write down little notes like, oh, this would be maybe a good thing to talk about. And I kind of wish I could show you all of the versions for every school in my files. I mean, it's kind of makes me feel like a really pathetic loser just to look at all of these versions that I've created for all of these essays. But they were very personal to me. I didn't let a lot of people read them. I let my husband read them. Really strictly from the perspective of, does this sound genuinely like me, and is this true about me? And other than that, I didn't really have a lot of people looking at them. And, I just tried to find what it was with each school that I really felt connected to write about.
Awesome. So I'm going to soapbox for a moment here. I'm going to be in my soapbox podium. So I hope everyone in the audience actually caught what Krista said in that very last point, which is she wanted to validate whether she sounded authentic in her essays. And I don't know if many of you guys out there and listening today or viewing us right now have been to previous exit interviews, but this is the most common theme that's brought up each time, which is just being yourself and making sure that you sound authentic. So a lot of people out there think that there's a type that you need to adopt yourself to in order to get into the school. Like, I need to sound like a banker to get into Harvard, even though I'm an entrepreneur. That's complete BS. And the admissions office is going to be able to look right through that. So focus on being authentic. Okay, I'm off my soapbox right now. You're kind of blowing my mind right now, Krista, in the sense that you said you started your application. Let me go back a little bit in time a little bit. When did you take your GMAT?
I took the GMAT in June, early June.
Okay. So, and you only took it once, I take it?
I only took it once, yes. Okay.
So you finished your GMAT in June. Okay, August, that's when all the essays are available. August, September is really the high time you're writing. You're doing 5 schools, round 1. Each school averages usually between 4 and 6 essays, let's say. Some are more than that even. Multiple drafts. How'd you find time for all this stuff? You're traveling, you're tired as hell. Like, you have a husband you need to talk to. Like, how did you find time to write these many drafts? Like, what's the deal? Tell us your secret.
So, there's really not a very good secret, to be honest, but we'll go back to the GMAT point, and it wasn't a time in my life when I was getting the most sleep, once again. And, you actually find, even when you're really busy and you work a lot, you actually find that there are some unused pockets throughout your day that you never really even realized. So, I just really devoted these 2 months to essay writing. So, this is going to sound once again really horrible, but I would usually not go out with my coworkers to grab lunch. I would rather sit at my desk and kind of work on some of my essays, and I wouldn't really go out with them to grab dinner either. I would get room service and work on my essays. And I actually think that traveling helps this cause just a little bit because you're away from home. You don't have all of the social options that you may have if you were at home and your friends were there. So, it can be very difficult to be traveling, but it can also create a lot of time that you don't otherwise feel like you have.
Right. That's a interesting sort of benefit I never realized, in the sense that maybe you have a needy husband, for example, who really wants to go out to movies all the time. I'm not saying you do, but
Yeah.
it is kind of nice to sort of to take yourself away in some ways, right? To focus on these things. And
Right.
I don't know if we all have that luxury in some ways, but
Right.
but yeah, okay, that's still. I don't know how you did 5 minutes. I'm blown away. I'm sure our audience is too. Okay, so you got through your essays after all the multiple drafts and stuff. You submitted. Now the wonderful moment has happened where HBS reaches out to you and says, "Krista, we'd like to invite you for an interview." So
Yeah.
let us talk about your interview experience. What was it like? Where'd you do it? Who'd you talk? Did you talk to admissions officer? All of that stuff.
Yeah. So I interviewed on campus in Boston, and I flew up there late on a Wednesday night, had my interview on Thursday, and so I went to a class Thursday morning, which was really helpful. There was a lot of people who had told me that would be a really great way to start your day. Go to a class in the morning and then do your interview immediately following lunch, and that ended up being like a perfect time. The class was just really cool. It got me really excited. Reinforced some of my beliefs about what the case method was and how awesome it was. So that was really helpful. I met up with a friend that is a current student, and we had lunch in Spangler Hall and kind of relaxed a little bit before I went to my interview. And then I walked over and did the interview. And it's actually, I think the interview experience was kind of hilarious looking back. And I've told a few people this, but they have groups of interviews starting at every half hour mark. So my interview was at like 1:30 or something like that. And so there were 6 or 7 of us in the waiting room waiting for our interviews. And it's all these like nervous kids, in their suits, and everyone is like kind of awkwardly talking to each other and asking where everyone's from and if they're nervous. And I don't get very nervous for things like that typically. And I was so incredibly nervous, like heart pounding, just terrified.
Yeah.
But my interviewer came in, and I was actually the first one to get called out of the pool of waiting people. And so she came in, and she immediately was just so warm and so friendly. And there was actually 2 women in my interview. It was 2 women and me. The other woman was, I think, just taking additional notes, or maybe she was training. I'm not. She didn't talk a lot. I'm not completely sure what she was doing.
So there's total 2 people in the room at that point, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, there were two members of the committee,
Huh.
but only one of them was really leading the interview and really talking. The other, like I said, was just kind of taking some extra notes and chiming in a laugh every here and there or whatever.
Okay.
The interview itself was, as everyone has said, it's exactly 30 minutes long. The woman that I interviewed with was very, very kind. She was really interested in all of my experiences, why I went from marathon over to booze,
Yeah.
what I think the benefits were, what I wanted to do after school. She didn't ask me any trick questions like, what news sources do you read or whatever. She didn't ask me any crazy questions. She asked me strictly questions on my experience and what my plans were. It was very, very relaxed, very, very good experience.
That's great. I mean, particularly the part that, no stress. I guess it is just like a pure fit type of, did you feel like they're just judging fit versus your answers? Or like, what was your gut from that? Good reaction.
That's a good question. I think that they probably were judging fit more. Most of the questions that she had asked were pretty well covered in my essays and in my resume. So I don't think she got a lot of new information other than just kind of seeing what my personality was and
Yeah.
what some of my drivers were.
Right. So I'm just curious, when you sort of describe the tone, like of how you're conversing, did it feel somewhat casual, or did it feel like a interview? Just sort of, I'm trying to dissect that a little bit more too.
It actually felt really casual.
Okay.
We were laughing about certain things. She was kind of changing directions based on what I said.
Yeah.
If I told her about an experience that I had at work, she might ask a follow-on question based on that.
Great. Yeah.
It was very relaxed.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that, and that's really what I try to advocate to our community as well, which is, just talk like you're don't go, don't use foul language or anything, but if you can speak as if the person is almost like at a friend level, but maybe a little bit more formal than that, but, friendly-ish. At least for Americans, for those of you who are international, I see a couple of international-looking names out there. Americans are very into down-to-earth people and just putting people at ease. It's not like a dark room with a spotlight on you and you're just answering a question. It's not an interrogation like it is perhaps other places. So okay, cool. Okay, this is sort of a weird hang-up that I have at this point whenever I talk about interviews, which is I like to ask people what they wear. Okay. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this question, but people ask me it all the time. And I've talked to a couple of guys who've gotten to Harvard, but I've yet to talk to actually a woman who described her outfit. What were you wearing, Krista?
Okay. I wore a black suit, pants, black pantsuit. I didn't wear a button down because I feel like I sometimes can't move very well in them. I feel like they're much less comfortable for women than they are for men. So I decided that I wanted to be really comfortable and not go with the button down. So I just wore like a shell. Maybe it was gray. I typically dress in variations of black. I'm very morbid. So, just a shell with a pantsuit. I had my hair down, which some people say that's like a major no-no. You should wear your hair in a ponytail and, try to look a little bit more like a man or something. But I wore my hair down and, didn't worry a whole lot about looking exactly perfect. And I think that contributed to me feeling more relaxed once I got going.
Gotcha. Great. I mean, sounds like pretty, casual, not overdone, that's
right.
Yeah, because I think some people have a lot of problem understanding what is the right. Do I go in how formal and versus how casual, and I don't know whether you interviewed at other schools too, but I always like to make the difference between a Harvard and Stanford, and where at Stanford I think they would be even more okay with you being perhaps even more casual than that if needed.
Right.
But it depends on the school, and it's always kind of fun to see the nuances of how people dress.
Yeah, there was another girl waiting for her interview when I was there, and she was wearing this. I don't know. I feel like this is important. She was wearing just a black sweater dress, which looked really nice, and I thought it looked perfectly formal, and no one seemed to think she was underdressed either. So I think just as long as you kind of stick to some of your business professional colors, and keep it pretty semi-formal, you're fine.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you guys what not to dress for or how to do your hair. So I remember doing an interview once at my previous company, Intuit, where I was a product manager, and this young kid comes in with this purple mohawk, and it really distracted me at the time. So not for the Harvard interview. Maybe for a Silicon Valley startup, though. Intuit was a little too stodgy for him anyway. So, okay. So this takes me now to, I guess, some questions about other questions about HBS. So now you've gotten in. Let's look more forward, though. So we know that after HBS, you have to go back to Booz for a couple of years. It sounds like it's a cool place to be anyway. Longer term, what are you going to do with your career, Krista?
So I go back and forth between whether my career actually might be at Booz or whether it's not at Booz beyond that 2-year period. What I do know now is that Booz is kind of a relatively young company. Obviously, we used to be a part of Booz Allen Hamilton, but since we've recently split, we're kind of in this period of forming our own culture and kind of deciding a lot of the things that are going to shape the company going forward. So I think there's a really great benefit to coming back for at least 2, maybe 4 or 5 years. And I mentioned earlier that I'm really passionate about women in business, and I think Booz is making a lot of changes now to make this a company where women can really, grow into leadership positions. And so I really want to be a part of that particular change and kind of learning how it works and all of that. If I don't stay at Booz, which, like I said, I'm not completely sure yet, but I probably will go back to an energy company, which is where I, was before I went over to Booz. I am from Texas, and energy is huge in Texas. And with this whole women in business conundrum, I think that the energy sector is one of the sectors that has the furthest to go, but also probably the most benefit to gain if they can really foster female leaders. So I would like to go and kind of be a part of that change also, and try to climb some of the leadership ranks in an energy company and kind of learn about what it takes and what some of the politics are, and really learn about what that might look like. And then thinking very far ahead, if I could have my perfect job, I would like to step out of the energy company that I'm working in and start up some sort of company that's really focused on developing female leaders for the energy industry. So whether that's coaching, or whether it's working with companies to kind of create the space where women can be successful leaders, I'm not completely sure, but that would be my 20-year goal.
Excellent.
Kind of doing my own thing.
All right. Well, hopefully, maybe some of that will be in California. I always like to recruit people into my state, and sounds like you'd have a lot to contribute and a lot to gain here too. We have Chevron also, and lots of great women leaders like Sheryl Sandberg. And so forth. So I did have a question actually about some of your personal issues with so having a spouse. You're coming in married, and I'm married myself, very happily married, and it seems like you're pretty happy too. But I always wondered, are there any concerns that you have about integrating your spouse into your HBS experience? What kinds of things were you thinking about as you both got into this process and ultimately selected Harvard? What are you guys concerned about? So
I am extremely lucky to have a husband who is just completely, he's my biggest fan, and he thinks this process is just really cool, and he's so excited about Harvard, and he actually wants to go back to school once I finish. So the plan is that I'll graduate in May of 2014, and then he will hopefully start school for the next 2 years. We didn't want to go at the same time because I feel like it can be limiting if you get into different schools or whatever. So we wanted to do kind of a separate deal. But I'm actually really excited that he's going with me. I think it will make the change and all of the pressure seem a little bit different, because I'll have this other life that I can kind of step back into and just spend time with my family and have him up there with me, rather than just being 110% in that Harvard bubble. I think it will help to have that other life. But I think it's obviously going to be tough. I'm going to be really busy. I will have some different friends than he has, things like that. But to be completely honest, we're kind of used to that now, with me being gone 3 nights a week, and at least we'll be actually living in the same place. So
yeah, that's true. That's a funny way of putting it. Yes, I guess you guys have been sort of conditioned with distance with your current job.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. This is super personal. Don't answer this if you don't feel comfortable. But do you plan to have kids during those 2 years, or is that
not in the 2 years?
Okay.
Which I think it's hilarious. I keep having people tell me that it's a great time to have kids, and I keep wanting to say, well, I totally get that if you're a guy, but women have to be pregnant and have children, and I think it sounds really complicated. So no, definitely not.
I think that's a good call. It's funny because outsiders sometimes have this stereotype of MBA being this party for 2 years. I'm going back to college, but it's really stressful as hell and super worked. Some of I consistently, whenever I have a friend going to Harvard, I'll shoot an email saying, hey, what's up? What are you doing? And then I'll never hear from them because they're just that busy. They can't even answer me, poor little me. So I agree. It's not maybe the best environment to start your family,
I don't think so. And I'm 25. I'm almost 26. So I think I've got some time.
Yeah, you totally do. So, okay, my last question before we get to some audience questions. And at this point, I'm going to remind our audience, if you have a question, send it over to us through that chat box on your right-hand side of your screen, and I'll see it and we'll try to get to it. So, Krista, any final words of wisdom you'd like to impart to future business school applicants?
So I think that there are a ton of things that I could probably say here, but one of the things that I think you get overloaded with in the application process is tips from people that maybe don't apply specifically to you. So I've tried to just boil it down to what I think are universal tips.
Yeah.
One of them is just to really start early. I would have taken the GMAT earlier, even just to alleviate some of the stress. Maybe take it in the spring when you're applying for round 1 or whatever. Start your essays early, give yourself plenty of time to just really, really work on them so that when you get to the point of actually turning them in, you feel like you've created just the best essay that you possibly can.
Right.
And this is another thing that kind of goes back to when I was writing essays. Let the whole process really, kind of take over your life for just a couple of months. I mean, read everything you can get your hands on. Just really think about all of your essays. Think about them when you're working out. Think about them when you're on the plane or when you're, driving to work or whatever. Just really let it seep into your life, and so you can really be personal about it. I think that's really important. And last, I think just realize that it's really exciting. It doesn't have to be completely stressful. This is one of the most exciting things you'll ever do, and you're not going to get into every school that you apply to, probably. I didn't get into every school that I applied to, and you're going to get in somewhere awesome, though, and it's just a really, really exciting time. So just kind of feel that energy and take advantage of it.
Did you feel like you were learning more about yourself as you were writing your essays?
Yes. I mean, I knew myself so much better than I ever wanted to by the time I finished the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I went through the process before, too. I actually got in business school, put in my deposit, and then pulled out the very last second because BTGMAT, I love you so much, I couldn't leave you. So, but I did feel that even though I applied and I ultimately decided not to go, the process of writing those essays and answering those super tough questions, I mean, you rarely have the time to really do that kind of self-reflection. So I
agree completely. It is you get to know yourself very, very well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great advice. So start early, as Krista said, guys. Now's the time too, actually, to start preparing for your GMAT in that case. So that's all the questions I got, Krista. And if you don't mind, we have some audience questions starting to come in. And maybe we can take a couple?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And final reminder, folks out there, if you have a question, now's the time to put it into that chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will get to it. So let me see. Okay. Okay. I see a question from Vineet, and kind of related to your last point of, he's asking, I'm planning to apply for the fall 2013, and therefore I have a little bit of time on my side. What do you recommend I focus on between now and when the application goes live? So between now and I guess June or July when the essays come out, what would you recommend focusing on?
I would say there are probably 3 different things that I would focus on. Obviously, taking the GMAT. That's probably your first priority. So if that hasn't been done yet, definitely focus on just really studying and getting that well taken care of. Second thing is I would probably start reading some books about the application process, which you may have already done. And if you're watching this chat, you might already know quite a bit about it. But this was the time when I really started reading books about what some of the essays typically ask, and how you can start to think about how you'll answer those. And then finally, talking to people that you work with that can write letters of rec. Maybe not right now. I mean, it is February, but within the next couple of months. You don't necessarily have to talk to them, but kind of just be really thinking about who you're going to ask and how you kind of want to structure that, because it is a big time commitment for them to help you with the process, and so you want to make sure that you're choosing the right people, you're giving them enough time, and you're really laying it out for them. So just think about who you would ask.
So let me ask a follow-up about that. Who did you end up asking to write your recommendations?
So I asked all people that I worked with. So once again, 5 schools. I didn't feel like I could ask anyone to write 5 recommendations. So I kind of split them up. I asked 2 of my closest people. One is a senior associate, so more of like a direct boss, and then one was a partner. There were 2 people that I felt very, very close to. I asked them to write 3.
Okay.
Other than that, I asked most people to write 1 or 2, and I got a pretty healthy mix of people that I had worked on projects directly for that knew my work really well, and then partners who I had a close relationship with, but maybe couldn't comment quite as specifically on work. So I tried to kind of balance those 2 things.
Were some of those recommenders clients, or were they just all on your team then?
All on my specific team. So I think if I count, I had 5 different people, and then I had 1 peer, so really 6, but my peer recommendation only wrote my 1 Stanford peer recommendation.
Okay, okay. One tactical question for you. So how did you thank them afterwards for writing these recommendations?
So I first waited a while because I wanted to be able to tell them what I was going to do, which school I was going to go to and all of that. I am pretty closely connected with all of them. So they were up, I was sending them emails. Oh, I got a Harvard interview, or I got a Stanford interview, whatever. I was kind of, keeping them updated. Yeah. And then when it was all said and done, I ended up just writing them each notes, and mailed them to their offices. Some are in different offices than I am. So I just really took some time to write them very, thoughtful thank you notes about how much I appreciated it and what, they had done and all of that, and just mailed those to them. So, I thought about buying them a gift, but these are all people that are senior to me and probably would have thought it was silly if I'd given them a Starbucks gift card or something. So I just wrote them a note and tried to be really thoughtful about it.
That's great. I mean, it's funny because buying like a fancy gift and stuff, that's actually pretty low effort, but writing a handwritten, like, thoughtful note, I can't remember the last time I received one of those.
Yeah, I don't do I don't do mail. Like I don't send cards, and I hate doing mail. Actually, I think I'm really horrible. So I thought it was pretty thoughtful.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so let's take another question here. That was a good way to start it off. Aha, Shan, you are asking a question that I want to ask, which is, what kinds of extracurricular activities do you have when you're applying?
So, I'll split this into 2 different answers, what I did in college and what I've done since college.
Okay.
When I was in college, I was the assistant director of a student-run service project, which was, it's actually the, if I want to put quotes on it, it's the largest student-run service project in the world. So it's at A&M in Texas, and when I did it, there were 11,000 student participants. So this is a whole year. This is a whole year of planning, lots of effort. So that actually was something that I hit on in all of my essays. It is something that is very, very close to my heart, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Yeah.
I had a few other little things that I did, but that was my major leadership extracurricular, deal. Of course, that was a while back. Since college, I haven't been doing a lot of extracurriculars, what with my travel schedule, and I was really worried about whether that would be a big issue, and it really wasn't. So I hope people don't really stress out a whole lot about that. I have a few things, I've been pretty actively involved in my church in Houston, and I've done some volunteer work here and there for the women's shelter, but nothing that I had a leadership position in, nothing that I'd say I was, week after week committed to, and so it didn't end up being a huge deal.
Yeah, that's great, and I think that's your experience is coming to relief to so many people who maybe consultants or bankers or have like very demanding jobs. I mean, at the end of the day, admissions officers are going to understand. I mean, you can't be doing all things all times, and when you're traveling, you can't, tutor that kid, as easily. It's not an expectation that you always have to meet. So,
and something else that I probably should hit on. It wasn't necessarily extracurricular, but I did try to get on, committees and things like that within booze that were focused on really forming culture and really helping, make this a better place for people to work. So that was something that, while it wasn't extra to actual work, it was extra to client work, and it required extra time. And so I think, doing something along those lines helps just a little bit, just to show that you're always going to pay it forward and kind of put your time back in.
Totally. I mean, it's that totally counts too, right? I mean, in fact, we had an exit interview, I think 2 weeks ago, with your future classmate. His name is Martin. And
yeah, I actually watched that one.
Oh, you did? Okay, cool. He touched on that a little bit too, which was, when you do those kinds of activities at work, that's valid as well, and great way to build some leadership too. So some good advice there. Cool. Let's see. All right, this is a question about how do you recommend connecting with HBS alums? So first of all, did you talk to a lot of alums before you started applying? And I guess any advice in terms of how you reach out to them to speak with them?
So I actually didn't really do that. There's one partner at Booz that I've worked with a lot. He's one of the ones that wrote 3 recs for me, and I'm really close to him. And he is a HBS graduate from the 90s at some point.
Yeah.
And so we were very close. We didn't actually talk a lot about his experience, though. It was more about the business school process overall and stuff like that. And I didn't actually reach out to any alums. I was trying, I think, well, not trying, but I didn't focus a whole lot on trying to figure out what I needed to do to be more HBS-ish.
Yeah.
Like, I just focused on trying to write in my essays what was genuine and what I really wanted to do, and so I didn't think it was that necessary to, have a lot of those discussions.
Okay. And, that question actually triggered a different question for me, which was about visiting campus. Is that something that you did before you applied?
I didn't visit any of the campuses. I don't think that I regret it. I think that it would have been cool to kind of go and visit classes and see what campus is about, and mainly just to give you a little bit more energy for the whole process. Because once you're there, it's really cool, and so to give you a little push, a little energy. But I did not visit a single one of them before I applied, and I, like I said, I applied to 5 schools, and I got into 4 of them. I don't think it's necessary to visit. So
that's awesome. I mean, there is a bit of a conspiracy theory right now where people think, it's actually maybe a consideration even in your application if you visit.
Right.
Like they'll note that, and maybe that's true, but. I mean, again, here's Krista. She didn't do it, but it worked out for her at the end. And it's only, I guess, campus visits are only necessary for in certain conditions too. Like maybe you're really iffy about the location. Whether you'd be happy in this environment. That's when it makes sense. But
yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to visit campus if it's for you and for making your decision. I don't think it plays a lot into their decision about you.
Gotcha. We touched on this next question a bit on your interviews, but I'm going to repeat it in case this person missed it. So this next question, I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce the name because I'm sorry, I'm really bad at that. But asking, I'll be interviewing at HBS in a month. Congratulations to you. And she asks, or he asks, during your interview, did they ask anything about current events? And the answer is no. Actually, you already covered that. Were there any curveballs, and how did you approach them? So you mentioned that there weren't really any surprises, but were there things that you did before the interview to help you sort of get your mind ready for those curveball answers? Yeah,
definitely. So I ended up purchasing the guide that the Harvard, newspaper actually publishes.
So
it's like a $25 or $35 guide.
Yeah.
Where basically they just type up a set of questions that they've heard people say have been asked in their interviews, and then usually they'll write like a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs about what the interviewer is really trying to get at, and all of the questions follow pretty general themes. So there's like a section on how they might ask you about leadership, and a section on your career experiences and your goals after school.
Yeah.
There are some questions in there that are typically considered some of the tougher questions about maybe current events, or if you have 30 seconds to address America now, tell us what you would say. That was really helpful, and so just kind of reading through that, making notes, thinking about it for a week or 2 before the interview was really helpful. And also I actually was very careful not to make like flashcards or write down really specific things, because personally I find that can make me more nervous if I feel like I have something specific that I have to say.
Yeah.
So I just try to think about some of the themes and prepare that way.
Gotcha. So you didn't want to over prepare and to make a robotic response, but just have enough to go on. Just to clarify, you mentioned that book. Was it from the Harbus? Harbus.org?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For folks to get to that book, I think I found it on the web just now. It's HARBUS.org. And here I can try to flash the website. I believe I saw there's a link to a book here that I seen a while back. So you won't have a hard time finding it if you just look around. Heard good things about it, so it worked for Krista, so you guys should maybe check it out too. Okay, cool. This is good. We're on fire here. Let's check out some other questions. Okay. This is a great question from Vineet again, which is about recommendation. So what level of detail did you provide about yourself to recommenders? So did you produce like a recommenders packet, like resumes and like what did you give to the recommenders to help them write?
So I definitely didn't produce a packet, but I did give them each kind of a special document. Maybe you would call it a letter, memo, whatever. It was probably a couple pages long. And what I did is just, said, these are the schools that you've agreed to help write recommendations for. I think I had 3 different sections that were just bullet points. One of them was just a reminder, here are the projects that we've worked together on. So, we worked at client X, and this was my particular work at that project, and here's how it turned out, just to refresh their memory. Mm-hmm. The second section was, here are some of the things that I have done that you might not know about, right? So maybe some of the stuff that I did at Booz that wasn't necessarily about client work, or maybe the big event that I mentioned from college, or some of the extracurriculars. Mm-hmm. I had a few bullet points around those. And then finally, I had a little section that had 3 or 4 bullet points about what that particular school or schools really hold, what they're really looking for. So Harvard would obviously be leadership, intellectual curiosity, things that, and I didn't add anything to that. I just simply said, here are the things that they really value. If you can find a way to weave those into your answers, that's really helpful. Yeah. And that's all that I gave them. So like I said, it was probably about a page or a page and a half for each of them, and they all told me it was really helpful, and not too much guidance, but just enough to kind of get the thoughts going.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Krista, we're at the time of the interview where we only have one question left, or we have time for. And this one is coming from Randy. So this may not be, this is sort of just chiming in your 2 cents because it's not directly related to your experiences. But Randy's asking, I'm currently new to the workplace. My major, so I just started working, and my major was not related to business. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but this person is interested in a business career, and is there any suggestions for people who have non-business backgrounds for how they should approach their MBA admissions? And I'm not quite sure if it really applies to you, but your thoughts.
That's fine. So I actually think that in a lot of ways that can be helpful. I think you could argue either way, that having the business background or not having the business background is helpful. But if you look at some of the schools and what the breakdowns are of people's majors before they actually came there are so many that are not business majors. And so I actually think that it's really just about that interest in a future business career. Mm-hmm. And you definitely shouldn't worry about not having a business background. I think that it's really not, it's a non-issue, actually.
Totally agree with Krista on that one. I mean, if you have a good reason for why an MBA is going to be great for your career, and it's a compelling reason, then that's valid. Having a non-traditional background is fine. I mean, I'll be your example. So I didn't go to business school, but I did get in. But
you almost did.
Yeah, I almost went, and that qualifies me to say this, which is I was a sociology major in college, and I did a master's in sociology. I did not take a single business class or really a math class, but it worked out because I had a good reason, and I totally agree with Krista. I mean, so she's a great example of someone who has like a real traditional consulting background. She got into HBS, and you're of course more than that, but that's sort of like a big stereotype. But we meet people all the time who can also have vastly different backgrounds. I'm sure you're going to be meeting with a ton of those folks once you enter campus this fall. So that all being said, we're now at, I guess, the end of our session. Unfortunately, we don't have too much more time to speak with you. But for those of you who are watching, we've been speaking with Krista, who is a fellow Beat the GMAT community member, and now a successful applicant, and now an incoming student at the Harvard Business School as an MBA student. Krista, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and for all your advice today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was good to do this, and I'm glad that there were people actually watching. So.
Definitely a lot of people watching, and I think that this is going to be such a great resource, this interview for future folks who apply to HBS and any business school, really. So best of luck to you when you move to Boston, and just kick some ass as a student there. I'm sure you're going to have a great time.
All right. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Krista. And a big thank you to all of our audience members out there who spent your evening with us. And we bid you farewell and good nights. All the best, guys.
See you later.